Welcome to video number 7 in this series of tips and tricks for Substance 3D Painter. In this video, I'm going to show you how you can take any texture that you currently have for your project and stylize it or change it so that it looks more stylized, kind of like that brushy pattern. It's really, really cool, and it's a different look that potentially gives you ideas on how to present or how to approach different projects. So let's go ahead and jump straight into it. All right, so these are the final textures that I created in terms of the metal, the plastic, all of that. This is exactly what I showed you in previous videos. Obviously, I just changed the colors and reduced the rust and all of that. But in essence, the breakdown of how I achieved this is exactly how I showed you in the previous videos, right? So this would be my final asset with, I would say this is still stylized in terms of the colors and the brightness that I use. And, I'm exaggerating a few things on purpose. So it is still stylized, but I would say it's more realistic than the other one that I showed you. So let me bring this in. So this is kind of like a more realistic approach to it, or like this is using the same textures that I just showed you, but obviously this is the final render. But what I'm going to show you in this video is how to achieve this type of stuff. So this is obviously a lot more stylized, and it has that sort of like playfulness to it, where you can see things, the brush strokes and things that are not perfectly well defined. And it is making use of everything that we have in the, let's say, more realistic texture. So if you pay attention to this area right here, right? So there's like a little bit of a scratch in there, revealing a bit of, metal. It is there as well, right? But it's a lot more stylized. It's just like a white brush stroke. So that's kind of like what I like. And this is fairly easy to achieve with the new tools in Painter. So that's why I wanted to show you. Not because it requires a completely different workflow, but because you can have these sort of like realistic textures or kind of like aim for something like this. And at the end, just say, you know what, I'm going to convert this into a more stylized one. And this is also a render from Blender, just using the same textures that I exported. So I'll cover that in the final video of this series. So let's go ahead and jump back into Painter. And I'm going to bring in all the layer stacks. And what I'm going to do is, on top of everything, I'm just going to search in the effects panel here. I'm going to type stylization. There we go. So this one right here, it's as simple as that. I'm going to take this, drag and drop it here at the top. So obviously it's going to affect anything that is below this. And there we go. Just by doing that, you see how it essentially stylizes everything. Now, the cool thing with this effect is that you can choose different presets. So in the properties of this layer, I can click on the select and apply, and I can choose something like neon. So that is going to create a neon effect that I think looks pretty cool. I actually use this one. So if I go back to the render here, some of these colors are actually from the lights that I created in Blender, but there is a hint of the purpliness and bluiness that I got from the neon. And I'll show you how I use this. All right, so this one is pretty cool. You can play around with maybe sunny lighting. There we go. So really cool, interesting things. I like the washed out colors. But this one is kind of cool. Also, Painterly, it's kind of like one of my favorites, this one, because it just makes it look, like a painter thing. So I do like this one. And if you want to see the difference between what we had and this stylization, all you need to do is turn this off. So it is using everything that is underneath to create this effect. So I want to start with this because this is what I like personally, but you can play around with anything that you want. So again, Painterly is the one that I like. Now, in terms of the stylization, you can choose, how this stylization works. So you can reduce the amount of stylization and you can increase that. I do like the fact that it is very stylized. And, if this is something that you're going to go for, my advice will be to define it quite clearly. Like if you're going to go for a stylized texture, then go for that, just go for the entire look like this. Because if you go for like something in between, it might not look like stylized enough, or it might look like you're trying to do hyper realistic, but then there's some like brush strokes, and it might not be the best way. I might be wrong. There might be a really good way and simple way to achieve that. But in this case, where I want to keep things very simple and not go into these sort of like complex complexities of how you perceive different things, I reckon this is a really good way to get started. So all of that is just to say that you can go ahead and select the Painterly, and that's it. This is already stylized, and we can go ahead and export it. I personally like to play around with this even more. So I'm going to go ahead and drop another stylization here on top. So this is going to take this that we had, the previous one, and it's going to stylize it again. So you see, this is like pushing things even further, right? And if you want to do another one, that is going to take that and stylize it again. So things start to become a little bit noisy if you do it this way. But the reason I'm showing you this is because I can change the preset. So I'm going to take this stylization. I'm going to choose the neon, for example. So that obviously is going to give me that neon color. But because these are ultimately layers with effects, I can take this neon color or this neon layer and I can add a black mask to hide it. I can bring in let's try a generator, and I can use something like the light, for instance. So the light is going to allow me to, if I enable this, this mask, it allows me to play with the light, the gradient from the top left corner. You can change the rotation of the light, right? But I think this works really, really well because it blends basically that neon and that becomes kind of like my light, right? And it's baking that light into this, right? And if I don't like the colors, by the way, you can do something like I showed you in the previous video. So I'm gonna go in the effects, I'm gonna type HSL, and I'm gonna drag and drop this on top of my stylization here. And this allows me to change the colors of just the stylization, right? Or of the light. I kind of like the effect of the neon. But if you want to contrast this a little bit more, maybe this is too soft. Let's actually change. I'm gonna reset to defaults. I think I like the light from the top. And let's go back in here. So yeah, this allows you to change things quite a bit. If you don't like the blue, I like the blue, but I think it goes with the rest. But anyway, what I was saying is you can go back in here, click on the levels. So you're adding levels to this mask, so you can crunch these values quite a bit, and then you will have something even more stylized because the light is going to be restricted to that section, right? So you'll see the difference between crunching those values with levels and not doing it, right? Again, I kind of like this as well. It's kind of like adding to what I already have. So super simple stuff. Just wanted to show you this because it is definitely something interesting. And keep in mind that you can keep playing around with this. So I can duplicate this stylization again and then select the effect. And this time the effect, I'm going to go for colorful strokes, see what that looks like. So this is kind of cool, but maybe I just want to restrict this one to the edges, right? So I'm going to also bring a black mask to this stylization layer, and I'm going to bring a generator, click on, let's try curvature, and add a lot of contrast in here, and then we can just reduce the balance. So now we have this nice contrasted color towards the edges. So you can have a lot of fun with this. It's, this is kind of like a playground for me. So once I have everything set up, this is just a matter of finding the right values and the right stylization for this type of asset. So I think, this is a little bit too much, but I think something like this works really well. All right. So just wanted to show you this as an extra tip. And in the next video, I'm going to show you how we can export this for Blender. And we're going to set up a simple, but again, an effective render with lights and everything in Blender for these textures. All right, so I'm going to leave this video here. Let me know if you prefer these stylized textures or if you prefer the more realistic in a way, just because I'm curious to see what you think about this, again, effect that is really simple, but it just changes things quite a bit. All right, see you in the next video.